Good evening, folks. Today I am making a video that I felt was warranted, that was needed, and I want to start it off by saying a big thank you to the support on the Facebook page. There has been an overwhelming number of people there to support me, and I really appreciate that. I do. It means a lot. When I'm in those modes, it's very difficult, and it's very difficult to come out of them. And when I'd got to work, I'd snapped out of it by then. I suppose I've got to do it. I can't. But when it's at home, it's finding out why that's happening and what's going on and what can I do to change that. And, well, to put it bluntly, I'm doing everything I can. And whether that being something like stepping back when I feel angry and not speaking to somebody when I feel angry and giving people space, that's one thing that I do now, which I never did before. A second thing, which is tied to the same thing, when I'm feeling mardy, I try not to talk to people, I try not to get on the wrong foot from people, I always try and be in a positive mood when I'm not, I make these exceptions. And, excuse me, and also when things aren't going quite right at home, I'm always apologetic. I'm always trying to come back with answers, trying to find out how I can solve it. I'm always trying to do jobs at home. I'm always trying to balance my life, always trying to do these different things. But there is one thing that frustrates me about it all, is the unwillingness of parenting to not make exceptions. They don't want to make exceptions because they think they're doing everything they can. And then they keep asking me, is there anything we can do? Well, I'm telling you what we can do, and you're not listening. And I've said before, I think what we can do is just make these exceptions of not snapping at me when I've done a simple thing, when I've done something wrong. And it's just a simple message of, look, not obviously being too nicey, but says, you've left the butter like this. Can you please clean it up? And then I'll come down and do it. We don't need this whole ritual of shouting or frustration or stern. Now, this is another thing. As a lot of you may know, maybe not all of you, I'm Aspergic. I've got autism, and it makes things difficult for me to read things. Like, I have a difficulty determining with Asperger's, what asking and what being stern is and what being shouted at is. Like, don't get angry with me when I don't know the information. I can't put piece and piece together. It's always very difficult to put piece and piece together. And it's always very difficult for me to identify those in between, to find those out. That's what being on the spectrum is. It's having that ability not having that ability to read certain cues, to read what you're talking about. And I think people forget when they're getting angry at me, I don't understand why. And they'll get even more angry because I don't understand. Like, I just genuinely don't know. I'm boggled, and it gets me wound up. It really does, because I don't think there's need for it. All it needs is for somebody to step back and say, look, we'll help you where we can. I'm not perfect. I screw up. I make mistakes. I do things wrong as well. It's not that I'm perfect. It's just the fact that I make exceptions, and I'm doing a lot for my mental health, and people are not seeing that. That's frustrating. This is how far I've come, rather than focusing on how I have been previously. Focus on what exceptions I have made to get me to this point, and it just like it doesn't seem to matter, and that is frustrating. That is a frustration that I wish could come off and just be gone, because it's the most annoying thing. It makes me feel incredibly hopeless. When I'm down in those moods, I feel hopeless. I feel suicidal. I feel down, you know? And I feel terrible. I feel terrible about myself. And, you know, I just wish there was some way people could get that message across, and they would accept it, and they would be willing to act on it and do things and help me. But it might just not be in their blood. It just might not be something that's in everybody's blood that they can do, and asking them to adapt to certain things might be too impossible for them. It might just be something that's not feasible. In that case, we're going to keep hitting this all the time. We're going to keep getting to this stage. But what I want to do is I want to work on it and limit the amount of times that it's happening. But the main key that things are going on here is actually COVID-19. I know I had to mention it, but COVID-19 is the top of everybody's list of anxieties at the moment. It's going round, it's affecting families. Family members have been killed by this awful thing, as the death rate's going up, and it's a terrible situation. And you worry about your parents, you worry about your family, you worry about what's going to happen to them, and it's the most awful time. And not to mention, I work at hospice as well, and they can't go and visit their relatives. There's only one person who can go in for 1 hour. Can you imagine that? They've got terminal cancer, and they've only got days left, and they can only be visited 1 hour a day by one family member. And the rest of them have to stand outside of the window watching what's happening. That's rubbish, isn't it? That, you know, they have to look at their dad through a window rather than, you know, speaking to them. You know, they can have the window open, but they can't go in. And that's rubbish, isn't it? That is awful. I mean, I can't bear to think how awful that must be. You know, and unfortunately it's happening. There's COVID-19 already here, and it's causing a lot of worry, a lot of upset, and frankly, it's dangerous. But we, at the same time, while I've got you all here on the video, don't panic. It's the worst thing you could do is panic. It's easier said than done. I was panicking earlier. You know, it's easier coming from somebody else. You know, it always is. But until you're experiencing that panic yourself, it's a little bit different, isn't it? And I do want to be a bit more lenient and say I accept the way you're feeling, and I'm also open to hearing your side and what's making you feel so anxious and what you want to happen, and we'd just come together and come to an agreement and about things that are going to work. So that's my take on it. I don't need to go on anymore. I think I've pretty much covered everything I need to cover. I have to go and find the wire now to connect this to my computer. So thank you for listening and tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.